Hello, Sue here. Obviously, it's a while since we were together back in November doing the training around what makes effective feedback. So, Claire Rhodes has asked me to put together a little précis of what makes effective feedback for online learning. So, that's what the purpose of this vlog is going to be. The key principles of effective feedback are the same whether you are learning online or learning face to face. So, to start with, let's just recap what they are. The Education Endowment Foundation tells us that we need to think about feedback that's positive, that picks out what the student's done well, as specifically as possible, something to improve, some strategies for how to improve that, and also the feedback needs to motivate the student to want to improve. The key element that I think is really important to remember, particularly for online learning, is the feedback does need to be timely. If a student did something 6 to 8 weeks ago, feeding back on it now is almost pointless because the chances are they've moved on, they've forgotten all about what that was, and the online world is very much an immediate world. So we need to think about feedback that we can do quickly and easily, but that's also manageable because the chances are you, like me, have a family at home or you have commitments as well as your schoolwork to do, and you have a limited amount of time to do all the things that you need to achieve. So we're going to think about how we give feedback that's efficient and helpful to students and helps them to make progress, because that, after all, is the purpose. So to start with, ask yourself, is this the kind of work that requires detailed written feedback? Could you give verbal feedback? Or could you use something very simple like a low stakes test to do the feedback for you, to do a lot of the work for you? We'll start with low stakes testing and then we'll talk about verbal feedback and then we'll move on to written feedback. And rather than trying to jot down notes whilst you're watching this vlog, I'm going to put together a little handout for you which will have all of the key information on it, so you can go back and have another look if you need to and find links to further information. Okay, so let's start with low stakes testing. There's a really good, strong evidence base to suggest that regular, repeated low stakes testing enhances pupil outcomes. So you are not kind of dipping out of doing proper marking by doing a low stakes test. Actually, you may well be enhancing your pupils' learning. There's some great software out there, things like Kahoot and Quizlet, enable you to set the test and provide a correct answer and 3 wrong answers, so a multiple choice test, and the students then go online and complete the test. The software will give you an analysis of the students' results. It'll give you individual error analysis, but it'll also give you cohort error analysis, so you can then look and see if there's an area where lots of students have got misconceptions. You could use that feedback to feed forward into your future planning for the next learning episode for those students. So some of those tests are really, really easy to administer and very, very quick. The other benefit is that once you've set up a great Quizlet or a great Kahoot quiz, you can use it year on year. So the time you're putting in now is going to save you time next year and in future years. Newcastle University have also developed their own low stakes online test kit called Numbus, and I'll put the link on the handout for you for that, which is excellent for things like A-level subjects in maths, business, economics. A whole range of different subjects would be able to use Numbus really efficiently. I'd highly recommend having a look at that. That's being used for higher education students at Newcastle Uni and across a number of HE institutions, and quite a few sixth forms are starting to pick that up as well. So have a look at Numbus for low stakes testing for A-level particularly. Okay, so the next thing to think about is how you might use that low stakes testing within a learning sequence. What I would do if it was me who'd got a class and I was going to use this, I would say, right, okay, I'm going to set you something to read before we meet online. So I might be meeting them for something like a Zoom tutorial online. I would give them a piece of reading to do, set them a low stakes test to see how much of that they've understood, and then use that to inform what I do when I actually meet the students online. If there's something that needs explaining, then that's a really useful bit of information I've got before I meet them, and then I've got time to go through and explain those things that they need more help with. If you haven't heard of Zoom, if you've not come across it, it's basically a video conferencing facility. It's really, really handy, very, very user-friendly and intuitive. I can do it, and that's saying something. You know what my IT skills are like. The other benefit of Zoom is that you can set your video conference to record. Obviously, think about things like parental permissions for that and just check with school that you have those. But if you can set your Zoom meeting with students to record and you're explaining something tricky, then if they don't get it the first time, you can give them access to the recording so they can go back and watch it again. And that's a really brilliant way of using feedback from something like a low stakes quiz and a discussion to provide future learning for students. Okay, so if we're thinking about comment-based feedback then, the tendency, I know certainly if you are somebody who's involved in something like an essay subject, is to always do lots of written comments, but that doesn't always have to be the case. Verbal comments can be just as useful and a lot quicker and more efficient than providing written comments every time. I know that you use Google Docs and there is a voice comment facility in that piece of software. So if you are doing written comments for an individual pupil on their work, you could use the voice comments facility on Google Docs to do that, and then the student can simply listen to your comments on their work. If, however, you want to do something that's going to be of benefit to more than one student or maybe a whole class, so say for example they've all misunderstood something, rather than trying to explain it to each one individually, you could do what I'm doing now, which is record a vlog on something like your phone or tablet. If you are too self-conscious to record a vlog, you could just do it as an MP3 file using the microphone facility, and then you could share that with students either by email, via something like Google Drive, or you could, even if you really wanted to, you could create something like a YouTube channel, which is very, very easy to do and free. So you could have, for example, Mrs. Rhodes' Top Psychology Help channel. That would be an easy thing to do. It takes probably about 45 minutes to set it up, and then you just upload your vlogs to it whenever you like. You get the pupils to subscribe to the channel, so whenever you put something on there, they get a notification that you've added something additional to help them. So again, really easy ways of providing feedback. Now, I know from when we met in November, some of you were worried about things like verbal feedback because there's the question about how do you know that they've understood it? How does somebody else external, so for example, an ISI inspector or somebody coming to have a look at the learning that's going on, how do they know that you actually gave the feedback? What you could do is provide the verbal feedback via your MP3 or your vlog, and then ask the students, when they resubmit the piece of work that the feedback was on, to jot down what their targets were and make a note of how they've addressed each of those targets. And then you've got evidence that you've given feedback, they've acted on the feedback, and you can look at what progress they've made as a result of the action they've taken. So again, it doesn't always have to be you that's doing the writing, okay? However, it can be, and we'll come on to that shortly. Another very simple way of providing feedback on written work, particularly on longer answers, so if you're involved in an essay-based subject like history or politics or something like that, is a traffic light system, which I really like. So a very simple way that you could use this to start with is if you downloaded a mid-range response from, say, one of the exam board websites for your subject, or if you have some previous year's responses from other students, take a mid-range response and send that to the students in your class. Ask them to take either 3 highlighters if they want to do it on paper, or they can do it using the highlighting function on their laptop or their tablet. Anything that's really good in the response, they highlight in green. If it's a really great point, it's green. If there's an area that could be better, that isn't really very clearly explained, that doesn't quite fully answer the question, that would be amber, so that would be highlighted in orange. Or if there's something that's a basic error that's simply wrong, they would highlight that in red. Then, if you are meeting them online, they all bring that document with them. Ideally make it fit on one piece of A4 if it's printable, or make it just one big paragraph that you can easily hold up. So they hold it up either on paper or perhaps on their tablet or on their laptop, or however they can do that. And you can look at all of them at the same time in a Zoom meeting or in whatever kind of video conferencing meeting you might be doing, and see immediately who's understood what was really good, and start a discussion around how that response might be improved. So they might say, okay, well, these areas we think could have been better explained, this wasn't very clear, and you can invite them to say how they would clarify, how they would explain better, how they would elaborate on that response. Now, that's a really brilliant way of using feedback in terms of helping the students have strategies to improve a piece of work. And once they've done that for somebody else's work, they then do it for their own. So you set a response for them to have a go at on perhaps a similar question. You might do it on the same question as long as they don't just pinch the response that you've already worked on. Set them a response to work on. They send you the response and you simply traffic light it. The first time they submit it, you don't write anything on it, you just traffic light it, which is a really fast way of giving feedback. They now understand the traffic light system because they've used it themselves, and they deduce what are the areas that I need to improve based on the traffic lights that I've been given. And they resubmit the response to you after they've improved it, and then you mark it in whichever way is most appropriate. Okay, so really simple ways of using feedback that aren't really word heavy. However, there will be times when you do need to provide written comments. So just going back to basics here, if you are doing written comments in something like a Word or a PowerPoint document, you simply highlight the text, you click on the review text tab, and then you click new comment and you just type in the comment that you want to make. That's it. However, I'm conscious that there are more efficient ways than just typing in comments all the way through a document. What you could do is create something like a comment bank using, for example, an exam board mark scheme. So if you know that you're likely to be writing something like clearer structure needed or elaborate more fully, then clearer structure might be comment number 1. Elaborate more fully might be comment number 2. So when you insert comment, rather than writing clearer structure, you just insert the number 1 or the number 2 or whatever it corresponds to, the mark scheme that you're using. Then you share the comment bank with the pupils and they look at what each of the numbers corresponds to in the comment bank. Let them do the legwork. It's part of their learning process to really think through what the feedback means and how to act on it. Anything that you can do to make your job a little bit more straightforward and to reduce the amount of time you're spending on giving feedback is really important, because at the end of the day, the purpose of the feedback is to help the pupils make progress, and you do not need to be writing line after line after line of comments in order for that to happen, not necessarily. Okay, so to sum up, begin by asking yourself, which pieces of work am I going to give feedback on? You don't necessarily need to give feedback on everything that a pupil does. It's not realistic and it's not necessarily going to help them. So be picky. Once you've decided which you are giving feedback on, ask what kind of feedback is most appropriate here. Could I use a low stakes test here? Could I use Kahoot or Quizlet or numbers or something of that order to just get a sense of what they understand, identify any specific areas and plan for the next lesson? Is it more helpful for me to give some kind of verbal feedback? Shall I do an MP3 or a vlog just for one pupil or for a cohort? Is it that they need written comments, and what's the most efficient way of doing those? Okay, hopefully that is going to give you a bit of a starting point. I know there's a huge spectrum of confidence around the use of IT for online learning at QM, so I apologise if I'm teaching my granny to suck eggs, as it were, but hopefully there'll be some of you who are looking at this thinking, actually I can have a go at this stuff. The key is that feedback needs to be specific, it needs to be positive, and it also needs to be timely. The best feedback helps pupils make progress, and it also motivates them to want to make that progress. Look after yourselves, stay safe, and I will put the handout that accompanies this vlog with it so that you can have a look back and see if there's anything that you want to pinch from there. Take care and see you soon. Bye for now.